like to welcome you to Boy Meets Wellness, a podcast that discusses the complexities, celebrations, and challenges of building a wellness ritual as a BOI, a person who is born obviously incredible. You are now listening to Boy Meets Wellness with poet, motivational speaker, and wellness lover, Evolve Benton.
BOI, born obviously incredible, especially when you wear it pretty. What's good, world? It's your boy Evolve. Welcome to Boy Meets Wellness. Today's episode features my amazing birthday twin, Bakari Jones. Shouts out to all the Leos out there. Bakari is a consultant, speaker, web developer, and event producer based in Baltimore, Maryland. Bakari has a passion for working with those that have traditionally been marginalized, including Black women and LGBT communities. In March 2018, she launched a new event series called Her Sweet Release, an event for Black women who love Black women. Bakari also was the lead of Boys of Baltimore back in the day, and we met through the Brown Boy Project. As we get settled in March, I think it's important that we settle in our goals for the new year. So my wellness tips for y'all in this episode is to take time to recenter, reevaluate, celebrate, and adjust your goals. Often we establish goals for the new year and we come back to them. We feel guilt or shame. You know, I was just recently thinking about how I've been trying to cut down on bread. And I'm like, man, but them cinnamon rolls are good. But I'm like, instead of me shaming myself, like, how can I recenter around what my goals are and how maybe eating things that don't cause inflammation in my body but are still tasty, like kale and garlic. I had some amazing kale and garlic last night. How those things might be a little bit better for the goals that I have. You know, just really think about it, reevaluate yourself, refocus, recenter, and try not to play the shame game, right? Because we're all working progress. And sometimes we just need to reevaluate. Maybe we are hitting our goals in particular ways. Like I really said I wanted to eat less beef, and I've been eating less beef, you know, because I feel like when I'm trying to digest it, my body doesn't feel that great. So a lot of my wellness goals, especially around my body, have been around like performance and as far as like in the gym, you know, getting stronger, and also the way that I feel. Not really physique right now. I would love a six pack, but I think my focus, right? Like my focus right now is really trying to get to a place where I know my body and I'm able to have a conversation with it about what works for it and adjust, reevaluate when it needs to happen. So I really appreciate you all listening to Boy Meets Wellness. It is amazing to have such a supportive community, you know, engaging in these conversations around wellness, entrepreneurship, and leadership in our community. So if you really like the podcast, it would be amazing if you could follow us on Instagram. That's Boy Meets Wellness, BOI Meets Wellness, spelled out phonetically, and leave a review on iTunes if you really like it. You know, that shows that folks are listening, gets folks engaged, and gets more folks the ability to know the work that we're doing. My name is Evolve, and you can find me anywhere. You know, you can find me especially at evolvebenton.com. Check out my Instagram, my Facebook. Thanks for listening, and now for the interview with Bakari Jones. Bakari, thank you for jumping on Boy Meets Wellness. I just really wanted you to check in with folks and let them know who you are, where you're from, pronouns, and what brings you joy.
Thank you for having me. Let me see. So again, my name is Bakari Jones. My pronouns are she and her. I'm in Baltimore, Maryland. Well, I'm actually in Baltimore County, Maryland, which is about 30 minutes outside of the city, if that. And what brings me joy? Creating spaces for people that look like me and cooking really good food. Those are the things that bring me joy.
Definitely.
Did I miss any of the questions? It was a list. It was a list.
Where are you from? You said Baltimore. Pronouns. You said that. You said your name. And you said you love to cook and to create spaces. Which is what I love about you, to be honest. Like that's my jam. That's my connection to you, because you do put up some amazing food stuff, and we could talk about that a little bit later. But
yes, I'm always gonna talk about that.
I just know once we go down that road, that it's gonna be
it's a rabbit hole. It's a rabbit hole. Yeah.
So
it's a rabbit hole.
We're gonna say that for later.
Put a pin in that, for real.
What I really appreciate about you is, it seems like your work is always connected to a larger movement. I've been, watching you probably like the last decade. I feel like we all been kind of like in this work and shifting and trying to figure out our ways. And even with like, Boys of Baltimore, and now you have Her Sweet Release. It always seems like there's a connection to a larger movement, which I really appreciate about you. So what makes you want to create, like these kind of spaces for LGBT people, for Black folks, and why is that important to you?
In a nutshell, it's just like the deficit. I think coming into spaces and the space being at one point in time Baltimore City. So being in Baltimore City and realizing that there just really weren't any spaces for us to get together. We definitely, I feel like, have been in this almost like a digital cohort that I think of us as, with folks that are on the West Coast, East Coast. I was mad inspired by Brooklyn Boyhood. And I remember being on Tumblr and seeing photos of you and Jay Marie. Like, everybody was just doing such dope stuff, like all over the country, basically, at that point. And so I wanted to start bringing people together in a physical space. I was so inspired by the things and the images that I was seeing online. And I think for me, I just realized that I needed things to be a little bit more almost tactile. Like, I needed to have like that one-on-one, like a face-to-face kind of experience with people. So that was kind of what inspired me to start Boys of Baltimore, was wanting to create the actual space, not just the digital space. And then I think that kind of spilled over. And I chronologically, I'd also started I don't know what you want to call it, like almost like a lounge series with a buddy of mine. It was called Wine and Lesbian Friends. And it was literally, you bring a bottle of wine, $7, and you come in and you have just a really good time. It was always at somebody's house. We rotated to different houses, and we only, emailed people and told them about the event. And then from there, for me, I think developmentally, it was a lot on my plate. So I stopped doing Wine and Lesbian Friends, and that's still going on here and there in DC, basically. And then Her Sweet Release, for me, was actually kind of birthed out of Wine and Lesbian Friends, kind of wanted to figure out what the next iteration of that would look like. So for people to be, I feel like a little bit more grown and sexy. At that point in time, I think a lot of people were in grad school, still, on a struggle bus. And, I wanted to create Her Sweet Release to be like the graduation, right? So this is like, okay, we've matured a little bit. And what would it look like if we were, not having to bring our own bottles of wine and pay $7 at the door? We're coming out, we're getting fresh and whatever it is that we feel good in, and having a really good time, open bar, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, I think wanting to create spaces where we could actually see one another, interact with one another. And there's a part of me that kind of feels like, I'm, and not to like put myself on a pedestal, I think, but feeling like there's a certain element of my persona, personhood, if you will, that's called to be like a master of ceremonies. So, I think some people paint with art, some people paint, or, some people create with like music, some people create with, wood or granite, whatever type of resources and materials. And I think one of my abilities is like bringing people together in physical spaces. So that's what I like doing.
That's dope, man. I haven't been to, an event yet. I can't wait till I'm able to come out to an event, but just seeing the images that's on the Her Sweet Release page, it kind of gets me really excited. And what really makes me, feel empowered by it is seeing so many beautiful Black women. And, I know like the tagline is like, for Black women who love Black women. And I was wondering if you could just, talk to the audience a little bit about, why you thought spaces for Black women were important. And what do you love about Black women?
Oh, that definitely. So I'm a little bit of a nerd in that I'm always fascinated by, from a business standpoint, like what works and what doesn't work. Like, I think, when we have the opportunity to use metrics and get data, all that good stuff, I'm fascinated by what, the quote unquote market tells us about different things. So it may not be interesting to a lot of people, but for me, it was mad interesting because when we started, it was like for, an upscale event for Black queer women, Black queer and lesbian women. And basically the response was terrible. The concept, yes, but the language, I think that we're in a generation where it's like people want people want to identify with certain things, but people also don't want to be like pigeonholed and cornered and boxed in with certain terms either. So one of the things that happened, like I said, was that when we put that initial language out, it just wasn't well received. And so I'm like, dang, well, how can I work around that? Like, what's the pivot from that? Like, it's the same demographic, but basically people are telling me that they don't just identify as lesbian, or they don't necessarily want to come to something that's like marketed to lesbians from the rooftop. You know what I'm saying? They were looking for something a little bit more subtle. And so just, I guess from a marketing standpoint, it was like, oh, this is about more than a label. This is really about how you identify this as a person. And I think when you boil it down, it's just Black women loving Black women. So that's one piece. And then, to me, I think one of the added bonuses is that it also allows us to, I guess, welcome in people that I think people that I consider personally allies. So that's some of my really good friends who have come to the last couple of events that we've had, and they don't identify on the LGBTQ spectrum, but they've been able to attend the events. And one of my friends actually said to me, like, I get it. She saw it was like a couple in a corner kissing, and she was like, yo, I get it. If this had been at a club, with men around, like, she's like, that would have never flown. Like, people would have been staring, ogling, like it would have just been a whole spectacle. And so I think, even just being able to have allies in the space that are not prioritized necessarily, but that understand the spectrum, right, and the full breadth of Black women. So that part to me is kind of dope. Not to get like OD deep, but basically I had a major surgery in 2016. I had a massive, essentially I guess it's considered a tumor, but a cyst basically on my ovary, and had to have it surgically removed. And the cyst was actually wrapped around my appendix. And so what that meant from a surgical standpoint was that, well, one, it was a surprise to my surgeon. And so when they went in, they were like, oh, also it's wrapped around your appendix. So for them, it made the surgery a little bit more complicated. It also meant that I had an incision that was a bit longer, which meant that my healing and recovery time was even longer. And so when I was on the back end of that surgery, when I looked up, like, the people that were around me that were helping me heal, that were helping me literally like walk to the bathroom, that were helping me cooking food, helping me in and out of the shower, you name it, like, they were all Black women, and they were all feminine Black women at that. And so I kind of felt like, okay, I think everything that happens to us is, for a reason. And so for me, it was like, yo, what is this? Like, what is the universe? What is God? What is the creator telling me? And I kind of just reflected. I was like, yo, I've been sort of battling with my own femininity for a minute, and being sat down, because I was sat down by the universe, right? And it was like being sat down and then being surrounded by nothing but Black feminine energy that was healing for me. It was like, yo, you really need to reevaluate, your relationship with femininity, with Black femininity specifically. And so I really wanted to create a space that honored Black women. And so that's another reason I was able to stumble upon just the language that says for Black women that love Black women, because I really do want, all Black women to feel comfortable there. We, of course, prioritize queer women, but it's, to me, it's a space for all of us to feel, safe and welcome and celebrated. There's so many things that I love about Black women, and I think it's just, where to even begin? I mean, we're multifaceted, we're resilient, we're creative, we're generous, we're sweet, we're kind, we're loving, all these different things. I think it's really difficult to pinpoint. I think almost like we have the ability to just like shapeshift and to kind of call forth whatever energy we need at the moment.
Yeah, man. Black women save the day all the time. I often stop and be like, that Black woman literally saved my life. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's so
Literally.
interesting to me when I'm going through my day, whether I'm on the BART and I have like interesting interactions, how Black women will navigate space and, create more space for me in the bathrooms, creating more space.
Mm-hmm.
And even just like recently, I went to Goodwill and I was hella stressed because I had hella stuff. We did some summer cleaning and we never got it out. So I went to Goodwill and it was a Black woman working there, and she was like, yeah, just pull right here. And, she helped me get the stuff out. And it was like, I was really like stressed I was going to get towed, you know what I mean? So I was trying to park far and then drag these bags, looking at me like, baby, like, no, we're going to do it this way.
I got you.
I got you.
Right.
I got you, you know? And it's like, they honestly, you know, always save the day, you know what I mean? For me personally, and mostly like Black films, you know? So I really appreciate
that. And, you know, I think for me, yeah, that's it. It's like, you know, I think of Black women as a tribe in a large sense, but I definitely think there are sections, right? And so to me, I'm also part of that reevaluation is figuring out my relationship with my masculinity, balancing, you know, my energies, and then also figuring out like what I view the role of masculinity to be in relationship to Black femininity. And so I think to me, in a major way, it really is about service. Like I think, you know, not trying to go down like the chivalry path, because that's a little jacked up with the patriarchy twist in there. But, you know, when you think about masculinity really being of service to Black femininity, that's really kind of what I was thinking about. Like, how can I use my gifts to be of service to Black women? And I think it's not necessarily the deepest, you know, type of work, but I do really think about entertainment, and I'm, again, more inspiration from Black women like the Pleasure Ninjas, who's like Dr. Brittany Cooper, Dr. Kyla Story, Dr. Joan Morgan. Like when I think about those women, right, they really prioritize pleasure and challenge us, not just me, but I think challenge us to think about what does a world, right, like after the revolution, what does the world look like? And it's like, if we're only considered about like war and tearing down and also not thinking about pleasure, then this world that we want to be in is still going to be lacking in some way. So most, I think, just getting more comfortable with my work being about pleasure and entertainment and celebration as well.
Yeah, and that's so much needed, even when we're in the revolution, right? Like we need the time to experience Black joy and Black love. And I was reading something recently that was saying like, you know, like that was our first experience. Like Black joy has always been there for us, you know what I mean? And that's why we continue to return to it as a part of our resilience. But what I also heard you talk about, you know, and I'm so happy that you made it through that surgery. That's a big deal to have anything, you know, anything internal happen to your body, because, you know, not having that visibility, I think, causes even more of an anxiety, right? Because it's something that you literally can't see. So what are some of the things that you did to heal? Like what is a part of your wellness practice? Because I think what you and I often talk about offline is like, we got hella dreams, but how do we do it in a sustainable way where we don't get burnt out, right?
Which is the constant Leo struggle.
It is the Leo struggle. And for the audience, you know, Bakari and I have the same birthday. So we really are on, you know, on the same path at times with overdoing a little bit of overdoing it. And I think the older we get, the better we get with it, the more we can see it coming. But what are some of your right? Exactly. What are some of your like wellness practices and what did you utilize in particular to get past, you know, the recovery stage of that process? Are you still in recovery? You know, just share a little bit of that with us.
So again, I cannot stress like how humbling the experience was, because one of the post-surgery sort of, you know, regimens that I was put on by my doctor was actually basically like my doctor induced menopause. And she was concerned about additional like hormonal growth. And so she wanted to basically, you know, drastically slow down estrogen for a pretty long period 6 months, which to me was a long period of time, because I don't know if any of you all that are listening now, or if anybody in your life has experienced hot flashes, but great day in the morning time. I had hot flashes for like 6 months straight. And they were so intense. And I just had a whole new respect for my mother, because I remember, you know, I'm on the East Coast, so it's cold in the wintertime. I remember my mom going through, I promise I'm going to bring it back around, but I remember my mom going through menopause and like riding down, like on the highway, 695, and my mom like having the windows down, like, yo, what are you doing? And let me tell you, it only took one hot flash for me to understand why she had all the windows down in the middle of one of her hot flashes. So
wow.
With that, I mean, it's like profuse sweating, but it's not, I don't know, I think I would never describe it as just being hot. It's literally, it feels like you are being, like you're on fire, but from the inside out. So it feels like you could jump in a swimming pool and it almost still wouldn't cool you off because the heat is coming, like the heat is internal. Anyway, so one of the things I had to do was drink mad water because I literally was having night sweats, like, I mean, like could sleep on top of a towel, like just sweating profusely. So I was losing, you know, I mean, you know, we all lose water, you know, by sweating, but I was sweating a lot. So definitely trying to up my water game more than I was on average. So I think I was trying to go for, they say like half your body weight in ounces. So I was trying to drink a little bit more than that. So I was drinking mad water. My incision is actually from just above like my belly button, almost down to my pubic bone, pelvis bone, whatever that bone is. And it's not quite a foot long, but it's probably about 10 inches.
Oh, wow.
And so,
that's pretty long. Yeah.
It was a major surgery. So, you know, part of the healing on the back end was also just trying to get my core tight. Please don't ask me to do any now, but at that time I was doing planks on a daily basis because I would probably have, I don't know, for anybody that's ever had surgery, that was my first surgery. And so part of the exhaustion from surgery is just, you know, you're on a lot of painkillers. They put all types of chemicals in your system to help you go under while you're being operated on. So the initial exhaustion is getting all those chemicals out of your system. But on the back end, after the surgery, it was like I could maybe sit in the chair, sit up for about 20 minutes. And then I was like, I got to lay down because my muscles literally could not hold me up anymore. So I started doing planks literally just to strengthen my core. On the back end, because I knew that white sugar white sugar, you know, feeds, you know, cysts, drastically trying to reduce my sugar intake. That is still a major struggle for me. I definitely consider myself, and I don't want to speak that, right? But I know that currently, the date that we're recording this, I still struggle with sugar, and just trying to reduce my overall sugar intake. I think the greater thing though mentally was that I was depressed. I was severely depressed when I had the surgery, to the point that I was like, yo, do I even want to wake up after this surgery? And I'm not, I think it's a fine line between glorifying quote unquote suicidal thoughts, but that's just where I was. I was at the point
definitely.
where legit, I was at one point, I'm a, spiritual person. So, before anything, it's of course I want to pray, especially before, massive surgery, I want to pray. But I can't even lie, it was really difficult for me to even pray for myself before having that surgery, again, relying on the Black women that were around me. But I had to really ask myself, do you even want to get up from this table? What's the point? And I remember, having the surgery and then kind of afterwards being well, I didn't die, so I must still be here for some reason. So, so extreme. But again, part of that, I'm sure, is because I'm a Leo. And so my perspective was really I didn't die, so I must still be here for a reason. And if I still have this body, you know what I mean? What can I do to take care of it? So mad water, starting to exercise more. Doing, reducing my sugar intake. And then I think, back to the mental piece, I consider it triage. After my surgery, I started going to therapy on a weekly basis. And I know some people go once a month or every other week, but I was yo, I need to get in here on a weekly basis because I was still depressed. So it was my body was was in this debilitated state. My mind was in a debilitated state. So I started going to therapy, and that for me was a really big deal. I grew up in a church, love my, family to death, my biological family and my church family. But for the most part, seeking counseling and therapy wasn't mentioned. It wasn't celebrated. If anything, it was frowned upon. And so I, really was like, yo, this is a really big, I mean, I don't know if people understand like how, the gap that we still, I think, have to close within the Black community, especially the portion of the Black community that grew up in very religious institutions. But it was such a stigma about going to see a therapist. So I had to get over a lot, but I think it required me being, essentially at like rock bottom to decide that that's what I was going to do. So therapy was one of the other pieces that I, kind of had to add to the puzzle. And
mental health is so hard for Black folks, man. That's very interesting to me. Yeah, because I was recently
isn't real.
Yeah, I was recently talking to my dad about it, and he was like, I went to a therapist once, and I was kind of, I had to stop because I would have never even thought he would have went one time. And he was like, yeah, but they were white and they just didn't get it. He was like, they made me feel worse, actually. And I was like, oh. Okay.
I mean, that's the other piece too. It's like, it's like so many other things. It takes you a minute. I mean, especially as like masculine people, right? Like we know it takes a minute to find the designers that fit. It takes, you got to try on a few different cuts before you kind of figure out which one is going to work for your body type. I think it's the same thing with therapy, but it's even more frightening because of all of the negativity surrounding. So I was able to find a Black woman that was, a therapist who also, I think she's very Black. She's very African centered. And so I felt like we were able to have, conversations that I imagine people would have with their therapist. And then I felt like we were able to have like the Black therapist conversations as well. Like, well, what about and prayer and, spiritual work? And, we were able to have like a multifaceted conversation or conversations rather. So, and my therapist also insisted that I practice doing breathing exercises. And as somebody that still, is trying to get a handle on anxiety, that to me was like a really critical piece. And again, going back to the surgery, right? Because it's on my abdomen, where based on where your diaphragm is, it actually hurt for me to do deep breathing. And it hurt, just because I was sore from the surgery. So it was a crazy time. And I mean, just a radical time for me, I think, in terms of healing and understanding my body and being gentle and patient and all that.
Yeah, that's real. Yeah, breathing, I really have been like focused on that probably all of 2018. Really, like, I was not breathing. Like, I realized that was a part of like so many struggles in my life. Like, I took a swim class in 2017. And then that really brought it up for me, like, damn, like, 'cause I couldn't swim all this time and I was afraid, but it also was because I wasn't breathing properly. You know what I mean? Like, just the basic thing of breathing underwater. And then recently, getting back into shape and doing like more like physical activity, I was like, I remember I used to be able to run and breathe, but I don't even know how to breathe and run anymore. You know what I mean? Like, it was like I had to like retrain my body because I had stepped out of it. Yeah. So it's, you mentioning that to me is like you being really connected to your body. You know what I mean? And I think that maybe is what the surgery was for. Like you said, it kind of set you down and put you in that place.
Yeah, it's like I didn't have a choice, I felt like I didn't have a
choice but to reconnect. It was like reconnect or disconnect. Like, that's what it sounds like.
That's it. Yeah. That was it. It was like, which way you gonna go? And even one from the breathing standpoint, like, I catch myself now, and I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people, we're taking really shallow breaths, and it's like if you take a breath and really like fill up your belly, your stomach, and realize like how much stale energy and air you're holding, man. So it really blew my mind, and I didn't realize like so many negative patterns that I had that I was just, they were just on autopilot, and so that was really a time where it was like, okay, about face. I didn't have no choice.
Yeah. So I think another thing that's showing is your ability to lead. You know what I mean? Because a lot of folks, when they go through things, they don't really know what they need for themselves, right? Like you said, yeah, you have Black women, yeah, but you were intentionally like, okay, my core is weak, I'm gonna do some planks, right? Like, I'm sweating,
right?
Hot flashes, give me more water. So, and then also in your business practices, like I could see, you know, like we've talked throughout, you know, the last couple of years, you'll say like, yeah, I'm doing this, and it happens. You know what I mean? It's really not a lot of things I've heard you say you're going to do that don't show up in the world. So like, you know, what's your secret tips on setting goals, on manifesting dreams, and just on making shit happen? Like, how do you do that? What would you like to share with the audience on, like, what are some tips?
So I think that for me, I think there's a certain level of dreaming that I always am doing, like dreaming and brainstorming. And I write a lot of things down, whether it's I use Google Docs a lot. I use Google Sheets, so like the, you know, Google version of Excel. I use that a lot. I have a whiteboard in my room. I write a lot of things down, and I will write something down and then, you know, draw an arrow next to that and a bubble and a circle. You know, I mean, I do a lot of mind mapping, and I try to really reverse engineer things. And you know, it's humbling to hear you say that, E, about, you know, not hearing me talk about a lot of things that haven't come to fruition. But I think it's so many things that never make it to the surface, probably for the best, but it's a lot of things that never make it to the surface. And so part of, you know, aging and maturing is understanding a little bit more my responsibility to edit, right? Like, I think it's an option for all of us, but I think as you get older, you start understanding that you really have to prioritize editing. And that can mean going from 10 ideas down to 2. That can mean going from, you know, 12 events down to 3, you know, whatever the case may be. Editing for me has been a big one that I feel like I've started to employ more. My nickname, once upon a time was, and I think still to a certain, you know, to some people, is busy. And it's because I was always doing something. And I kind of had this approach that, like, I'm going to throw, you know, 100 irons in the fire. And if, you know, 37 of them, you know, succeed, then cool, you know, but it's like, well, it would be less than that if I only threw 50 of them in the fire. So let me just, you know, go for it all. I feel like I'm really trying to eat failure for breakfast. And I think that for a lot of Black people, especially from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I think that's something that's challenging. I have a whole like philosophy and little baby thesis on why it's difficult for us. But I think I'm at the point now where I'm really, really, really wanting to dissect all of my failures. And it's not always fun, you know, but it's like I want to know why something didn't work. So like I said, related to Her Sweet Release, I actually had the first Her Sweet Release scheduled to happen in October of 2017. And I just didn't feel like I sold enough tickets. So I called it. I refunded all the money. It was mad embarrassing. Like, it was so embarrassing to have to give these people all this money back and tell them the event wasn't happening, blah, 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 and please bear with me. And, you know, I hope you support us again in the future. And looked at the calendar and was like, I need more time to market. I need more time to plan. And when I looked at the calendar, I was like, okay, November, December is out. January is out for the, you know, because of the time of year on the East Coast. Like, it's definitely going to be snowing. February is out because, you know, Black History programming is just on swole in a predominantly Black city like Baltimore. And then I was like, okay, the next event's going to be in March. So it wasn't even like, you know, it was just, you know, oh, okay, we're going to, like, I literally shifted an event from October to March and then really kind of just restarted and then just dissecting all of the failures. I had a horrible flyer. You know, I found out that people didn't want to, you know, our community didn't want to be marketed to as Black, queer, and lesbian women. So many things. And I think that because I was really, I don't want to say obsessed, but like I was really invested in figuring out what the failure was. So a pivot, like I went from handing out flyers to handing out business cards because that was more on point with like the brand. So I think there's a certain level of resilience that you have to have when it comes to business and really just being relentless and knowing that, you know, you set the goal and you're going to accomplish it, and not accomplishing it is not an option. I think it requires a certain level of mental fortitude. And I think what I'm trying to practice more of, I feel like finally, is understanding gratitude. So the perspective of like, oh man, I still got 50 more tickets to sell, to I'm so thankful for the 50 tickets that I have already sold, like that, like really shifting my perspective to focus on what I do have instead of what I don't have. So I think dissecting my failures that would be my number one tip, because if you don't, I can't tell anybody like how to shoot their shot. But if it doesn't go in, then it's like you have to be obsessed about, adjusting. It's like, all right, okay, that was a little off to the right, so let me move to the, like you have to just adjust your sail accordingly. And I think if you kind of fall in love with that part, then I feel like you're going to accomplish your goal, eventually. Who knows what the timeline may be, but you're going to accomplish it at some point.
Ashe. You said eat the failure for breakfast, man. Yeah,
For real.
man. I was like recently thinking about that, about how, because not recently, probably like 6 months, 8 months ago, I quit my fraternity, right? Like I just, I walked away, and that was one of my first babies, one of my first businesses. But really dissecting the relationships, dissecting the process, dissecting like what worked, what didn't work. It has like, it's why this podcast exists, right? Like it's why I have space for it. But it really has brought my own perspective on just myself. You know what I mean? And I even had to do some forgiveness. Like that's a part of failure too, that I think that a lot of folks don't want to deal with. Cause it's like, if you admit that you failed, then you gonna mourn it. You have to mourn the loss. And that takes acknowledging that you have to forgive. And it's the hardest person I find in the world to forgive is myself. I can probably like forgive the world all day, but when it comes to me and making a mistake, I'm like, dang, like, I'm really hard on myself. So, that's what I always tell folks.
So accurate.
That's
so accurate. And I realized
like,
the relationship. Yeah, no, that's spot on. I didn't even think about that aspect, but I realized just in my own reflection and processing, I think I struggle with forgiveness. And part of, like, for me, again, just reflecting, I was like, okay, level one, you struggle with forgiving other people because you struggle with forgiving yourself, So, I think it's all a reflection. And let me tell you, I have shed some thug tears over some of my failures. You know what I mean? Because, sometimes, something is a gamble. Like I knew the event in October was a little bit of a gamble just because it was something new. But, I felt like I tanked, I felt like I tanked. So to even be in a space where, we've now had 2 events, we have a third coming up, and, and are being invited to come to other places and opportunities to potentially expand and, go into other parts of the country, to me is like, man, it's like, you see the highlight reel on Instagram, but, I need to do a better job showing that behind the scenes footage of of the terrible failures. But, those are all like ways that we pivot. So.
Yeah, I think we have to show more of our failures, because then, when the documentaries drop, like, Whitney and Michael, when all the real stuff drops, people don't be like, oh, that's how life really was. Because everybody acts so surprised about things. And I'm like, well, if these people were performing at this high of a level and we've seen them being drained, like, and then we want to act surprised about it.
Right. It's like, come on now. I think it's like if you at that level, I think the higher the level, the greater the opportunity. The greater the chance, right, of you failing. Like if you're going up high, it's going to be a high fail. You know what I mean? Like a large failure. So.
Yeah, man. So what goals you got for the new year, for 2019? I think for me, one of my main goals is to like celebrate my goals that I accomplished. Because I think last year I was kind of doing like this model off of the 12-week year, which is a book I read about how to get things done. And throughout the book, it says like, you break your year into 12 weeks, right? So that's, you're trying to accomplish 1 or 2 goals in 12 weeks. And then at the end of that time, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to celebrate in some way. But I wasn't really doing that throughout 2018. I was kind of just like, kind of giving myself a little bit of a pat on the back, but not an intentional way to acknowledge myself, and I think I could do that. That doesn't mean I got to go out and even spend a lot of money, but even if I'm just stopping and saying, you know what, this Saturday we gonna play Grand Theft Auto all day, right? Like really putting
all
it
day
on my calendar, and circling, put some stars by it, like when I was in middle school, and really acknowledging it, almost like it's a birthday. You know what I mean? Like you did that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of my goals. But what are your goals for this new year?
First of all, I feel like reading the 12-week year needs to be on the list. That's very intriguing to me. I haven't heard about it or read it, but I'm curious now to kind of dive in.
I got a digital copy. This might not be legal. We might have to cut this part out.
I mean,
no, I'm just kidding.
Okay, cut that out. Cut that out.
But I'll send it to you if I do. I'll send it to you so you can check it out. You would love it. I know you would love it.
I love y'all. Please, thank you in advance. 2019. So calendar-wise, like I think I'm trying to do a much better job of setting realistic goals. Back to the Leo thing, I, again, can bite off way more than I can actually chew. Eyes are bigger than my stomach, that whole thing. And so I'm trying to set more realistic goals. I think editing is a major part of that. We are, I guess while we're recording this, it's like Mercury retrograde. And so I'm definitely planning on spending the next 3 weeks really reflecting on 2018 and kind of using that insight to help me, decide what's the smartest way for me to move forward in 2019. But setting more realistic goals is at the top of the list so that I'm not as like heartbroken, I think when things don't pan out, quite the way that I wanted them to. And then I would say the next one is really prioritizing myself. I have a lot of love for my friends and family to the point that, if someone calls, I feel like I'm available, like the drop of a dime, like, and that type of thing. And it's not to say that I don't want to do it, but I realize a lot of times as it relates to my own goals, I fall short because I prioritize someone else and a loved one, no less. And so I don't want that level of resentment to be there in the future because I didn't, crush whatever my goal was. Like, so I just feel like the only way for me to accomplish that is to prioritize myself more. It's not about what I do, doing less with them, but really asking myself, like, did I prioritize myself? So
yeah,
I'm hoping that'll help me be more realistic with my goals, because if I have more time on myself, then I got more time on my goals.
Exactly. My trainer often tells me, when you give a no to someone else, that's a yes to yourself, right? Like it's not, it doesn't have to be, like this taking from, but you're saying yes to yourself today. And if you give more yeses, then you can give more yeses out later on, right? Like we got to come with the full cup. So thank you for that reminder, because I need that too. I mean, I think we both have talked about how we love on family, sometimes too hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to pace it. You have to pace it a little bit. So back to this eating failure for breakfast. Let's get on the food tip real quick. So you always posting about, especially on Twitter, and because I don't live close to you, I try not to get offended, but if I did live close to you, I'll be like, where is my plate? Because you like, I cooked the black eyed peas today. I got these cornbread in here. I got this going on. And most of it seems really like plant-based, vegan.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to know, like, are you vegan? Are you vegetarian? What's your favorite dish to cook? And when can we get a little bit more information on that? Because you did drop that buffalo cauliflower joint.
Yes.
And that is my jam. That is my jam.
So it's so I love, thank you again for this opportunity to just talk about this. I think this is healing for me because it is a reminder that we are all so like multifaceted. We're all multi-hyphenate individuals. And I love cooking. I definitely feel like I have recently come to terms with the fact that Cooking full time is definitely not what I'm trying to do, but I love being able to cook, again, back in friends and family. I love being able to cook and feed like my loved ones. I feel like I try to be healthy. I don't identify as a vegan. I don't exclusively identify as a like vegetarian or pescatarian. I feel like I'm mostly vegetarian. So I think I'm probably like 20% vegan, 60% vegetarian, and then there's like another 20% pescatarian, maybe 10% pescatarian, 30% vegan. And I only say that because it's difficult, right? And it really depends on what the mood is and what type of fish it is. So I try to, when I'm eating fish, I try to stick with like the cold water fish, like tuna and salmon. But again, because of the state of our planet right now, sometimes it's kind of looking like seafood is really not the best thing for any of us to really be eating. And so that kind of pushes me back into, the plant-based vegetarian and vegan options. Another point in terms of wellness, I actually found out that I had, and I think that a lot of medical conditions are reversible, and I think vertigo was one of them. When I was in my sophomore year in college, so I was 19, I had a crazy, and it was wild. I remember I was opening a can of Hawaiian Punch. When the last time you seen a can of Hawaiian Punch? Side note. But I was opening a can of Hawaiian Punch.
Throwback.
Right? Like, that's how you know. And I looked down, and the room just started spinning. And I ended up going to the emergency room. Couldn't figure out what's going on. Fast forward, I come back home. I was in Philly going to college. I came back home to Baltimore. Begged my pediatrician to let me see, or for him to see me. Real old school doctor. And he was like, you have vertigo. And, based on these symptoms. And he's like, it's very uncommon for somebody your age, but, given like the American diet, basically with, all the additives and preservatives and sugar and salt that's in our diet, like it kind of makes sense. And so he told me when I was 19 that the triggers for vertigo were sodium, caffeine, and stress. And so I immediately cut caffeine out of my diet. And then I don't know that I would say it's immediate, because my journey in terms of like meditation and wellness has definitely been like real windy and spotty at some points. But I cut out caffeine altogether. So, during finals, like I stopped drinking Mountain Dew and Red Bull and all of that. And then started really just looking at the back of every package to look at the sodium and everything to kind of drastically reduce it. So I started cooking a lot of stuff for myself. Mostly because so many things that I would find in the store would have like, and I didn't have any metrics. I just knew I was really sick and I felt terrible. So I started thinking like, okay, well, what's going to be a metric? So, the daily value on the back of most containers, if it said, this is 30% of your daily, sodium intake, I would just double it and be like, okay, well, if I have a serving of this, I'm going to assume that this is 60% of what I'm supposed to have in a day, because I know I need to have a lot less than the average bear. So that kind of like, that's really what I think kind of just made me more curious about cooking and wanted to cook really flavorful stuff for myself, that, that was healthy, and that tasted good. And I think a lot of times we rely really heavily on salt to flavor things, and that's not the only thing we can do. So right now, my favorite thing to cook is black-eyed peas. I think I would say like beans and lentils in general. I'm on a quest to master all of them. This last week was black beans, and I think, I'm mostly plant-based diet, so trying to make sure that I get a solid amount of protein is really important, and so beans are, a really good source. So I love making black-eyed peas. I don't really know why I didn't like them as a kid, but as an adult, I love them. Make sure you put that bay leaf in there. And again, from the sodium standpoint, it's random as all get out, but I really love making my own vegetable broth. It's a base for so many things, and I figured out like how to make it, what makes it taste good, and then I can freeze it. And so like whatever I'm making in the coming weeks, I can just grab my own vegetable broth rather than having to go to, whatever grocery store and buy it. Like I already got my vegetable broth. And, I feel like I'm low-key kind of like recycling because, I use the butter in the vegetables to make it blah, blah, blah. So throwing away less stuff since I can't compost just yet. So it's mad random, but beans and vegetable broth. That's what I love making right now.
That sounds yummy, man. That sounds really, really tasty, actually. You said so much in there, and I was really thinking about how much my diet has changed. Like, I remember being in college and drinking like Red Bull, like a pack a week. Like, it was nothing.
Easy.
And not even drinking no water. Like, I survived years without, like, maybe I would have a glass here and there, but like, I'm like, and I really do believe that you can heal your body. So a part of my journey was that I got introduced to Sean Stevenson, which I mentioned him like on a couple of podcasts. I'm fangirling. Yes, folks, I'm fangirling. So Sean Stevenson. But a part of his story is that he was told that he had this spinal disease, right? Like, that was like pretty much causing him to not be able to walk. Like, they were saying, like, he was like 22 years old, and they were like, you'll probably be in a wheelchair by the time you're 30, type of thing. So that's when he really went into investigating like food and how to like heal his own body, and he's done it all by himself. You know what I mean? Like, through utilizing different foods, through not eating certain things, cutting out a lot of like foods that inflame his body. And that's how I kind of learned from him, because I realized, I was like, yes, I was overweight, but I was also sick. Like, I didn't even realize how sick I was because of the fat, which I didn't look at fat as inflammation at that time. I just looked at it as like, okay, your boy been eating too much, like maybe I need to cut back. But really, like, my body is inflamed. Like, this is not,
and working double time, like working harder
time. Yeah,
you know what I mean, to do basic things. It's like, man, I'll be tired too. Like,
all that weight, you know what I mean? But not good weight, not weight that's gonna support your frame. Literally weight that's like pulling it,
holding you down. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. So I can't wait to have some of those black eyed peas. So I got one more question for you before we jump into Boy Talk and Hop, which is the fun part of the show.
Okay.
What would you say, because, my partner is from Maryland, but I always like to ask.
That's right.
I like to ask people if I was in Baltimore, where do I go? Where do I go to get some good yum besides your house? Because, I can't eat you out of house.
I'm about to say, I mean, come on, Will. Come on over and get a plate, baby.
I'm going to definitely come get me a plate, but where can I get the bomb crab cakes? Where can I get the chicken box? Where are the spots at?
For vegetarian and vegan food, Land of Kush, which is black owned, and Grindhouse Juice Bar, which is also black owned. Those would be the top two spots that I would think of. Oh, now in terms of wings, I don't know about a chicken box, but wings. Sharif's, everybody in my family goes and gets wings from there.
That sounds bomb.
And then
like hot wings, lemon pepper, different flavors, or fried wings.
Yeah, like, and then they're smoked apparently. Yeah, I think they're smoked wings. I just know. I haven't eaten them, but I just know that's where everybody. Hey, from Sharif's. Yeah, like everybody goes to Sharif's to get wings. And then this place called Collins Seafood. It's probably the best bet for like crab cake and all that good stuff. Crab cakes are funny. Like, it's one of those things where it's like everybody makes it a little bit different, So
you gotta find your person.
I'm gonna say, come to my house for a crab cake, and then you can go explore elsewhere for for like, a black bean burger, the wings from Sharif's, all the like faux meat situations. Land of Kush is always on point, and then Land of Kush is though too, because they usually have like different like bakers, like that they get little like vegan desserts from as well. So you get, you're gonna get your food and you're gonna get something sweet afterwards, which is again my love for sugar.
Nice. So before we jump into Boy Talk and Hop, how can folks get connected to your movement, get connected to your work? Where do we follow you? What website should we be looking at? What's next for Bakari?
So I would say I would love for people to check out goodchemistry.com. That's GOOD. Chemistry is spelled QUEMISTRY, and the Q in chemistry, obviously, or QU rather, is because it is queer. That's what I'm most excited about. I launched last year. I remember us talking about this too last year. These chemistry sets, which are like small self-care packages, they're actually cigar boxes that are like lined with Ankara fabric, and they have about a dozen different items related to self-care inside. So red raspberry leaf tea for folks that experience cramping, Himalayan sea salt to do a saltwater flush. That's also related to cramping, menstrual cramps. There's a resin burner. It's all types of really cool stuff. You can check out goodchemistry.com and look at, and then click on chemistry sets. Those are available for sale. And I would say that's the gateway. Good Chemistry is the name of my parent company, so people can find out about Her Sweet Release through that website as well. And if folks are interested in talking to me, you can find me at BakariJones.com, BakariJones.com. And you and I can get connected there. But I would say what I'm most excited about for 2019 is these chemistry sets. I don't think that we've had a product that's related to wellness. And this, like, I think about this as like what I would have wanted to receive from a loved one when I started my cycle. So that's what it is. And I'm excited about it.
That's dope. I'm really excited about those boxes, and I can't wait to get one. My period story, my first one, like my mom, actually me and one of my first cousins started our period on the same day, which is really weird and random, our first period. So our moms were on the phone, like really excited about it. And we were like, this is like not fun. Like it was
terrible.
Totally
this is
not the
actually
experience I wanted to have. And it instantly went to a conversation about sex with my mother. And I was just like, I don't feel good. Like, where is the chocolate? Like, teach me how to take care of myself. Like that's what I really wanted. I did not want to have no conversation.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's so even down to the chocolate, right? Like, there are vegan brownies in there that are like gluten-free, nut-free, soy-free. So they're like allergen in general free, and they still taste good. They give you that little chocolate hit. There's toothpaste in there, the old school pimple remedy. You know what I'm saying? There's like a little mini notebook and a pen, and it's, I think, really cool stuff. Like I said, these are literally the items that I wish somebody gave me when I started my cycle. There's like a little shower fizz in there for you to, have a nice little relaxing, shower steam. It smells like lemongrass and eucalyptus. And then you still have the box itself is a keepsake. And you can put in it whatever you would like, whether that's, organic pads or, whatever the case may be. So
that's hella dope. Well, folks,
that's a whole nother episode in and of itself, though.
Exactly.
The period journey.
We could totally do that. Maybe we'll bring on a few boys to kind of talk about that. Well, folks, make sure y'all check that out. Make sure y'all grab a box. I know I will. Continue to follow Bakari's work. Continue to follow the journey of greatness and see what makes it happen. So, boy talk and hop. This is my favorite part because I like to hear what people are going to say. This is kind of like, this is not stage, not saying at the beginning stage, but this is really like working on other sides of your brain to see how you
right. It's like word association, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to do like the fill in the blank type of thing. So I'm going to say something like, I love to watch, and then you would say, I love to watch this, right? You would just fill in the blank with that. So you ready? You need to do a little stretching?
I mean, I'm as ready as I'm going to be, know?
All right, cool. So we're going to start off with more money, more
opportunities.
Sex is
freeing.
My favorite food is
Is sweets as a category allowed?
Yeah, sweets is allowed.
Dessert.
Which dessert though? If you could just pick one. Or maybe
if I pick one, anything with chocolate.
Okay. If you could spend a day with anyone, it would be blank, and y'all would do blank.
If I could spend a day with anyone, it would be Jay-Z, and we would discuss how to grow businesses.
Pick that brain of that brilliant man. I see you.
Listen, it was like Oprah was like a close, you know, I was torn. I'm like, I really want to go with Oprah also, but I don't think Oprah is, I mean, I know Oprah is business minded, but I know Oprah got more of that muscle. So she like got more people like you be in charge of my business. I feel like Jay-Z is a little bit more hands on.
Yeah, it appears that he is. I think he is too.
You know?
Yeah, I could see that. His machine is still, you know, still being built compared to Oprah.
It's still being built, right?
Yeah. Oprah
she like, I said, go and start the school up because, you know.
All right, the next one is I love to watch.
Cooking shows, Chopped especially.
Wellness is
a winding road. A winding road.
Last but not least, Bakari is?
Bakari is a bad mother, shut your mouth, who is endeavoring to be kinder and sweeter and gentler, more compassionate with herself and others every day.
Yes. I see that in you. I remember talking to you when we first met, like about Boys of Baltimore, and I remember our conversation being very guarded. I don't know if you remember.
Very.
Like we were both like in the corner. It was like a spades game. Like you was on the other side of the table, and we was holding them cards so tight.
I was so scared, yo.
I was too.
I think
scared. It was because I seen so much of myself in you. You know what I mean? And I think we both seen that. And it's interesting to see the masculine journey of like seeing that and feeling fear, and then growing up and feeling collaboration. You know what I mean? And I think that's what we're seeing as we, you know, grow and go into our 30s, and you know, and get more muscle and more understanding about the work. So I thank you for being there with me, and I thank you for being here with me now. I appreciate both.
Oh man,
both of the
thank you. Thank you. It's to me, it's so humbling to be able to have a comrade that you feel like you can look back and see like those, like how those different milestones manifested for both of us. I was talking to somebody recently about like that whole being guarded. I was so afraid of collaboration because I didn't know. I was so scared building my brand that I thought that collaborating meant that I was going to lose something. And I think now understanding that, you know, again, like just opportunities, you know what I mean? We're all helping each other grow. So I'm very thankful. I am Bakari Jones, and I am born, obviously, incredible.